Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 255. At the opening of this episode, I said recognition, power, and influence is your birthright. What I didn't say is making it to the executive suite should be your lifelong goal in order to take any action in your career. And so many women that I speak with are waiting to get that level of decision to know and to have that clarity of, I really want to be in the C suite, or I really want to be part of the leadership team before they take any action towards getting themselves there. And what ends up happening is a level of indecision that is very destructive, not only towards your ability to really make that impact at your company, but it's destructive to all womankind because truthfully, we need you at the leadership table. And when you start taking action, you get closer to making that difference that you really want to make. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to break free of that indecision and to start taking action towards the bigger goals that you know or don't know that you have. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms. Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. Thank you so much for the outpouring of gratitude for my podcast episode last week, speaking out about the results from the United States election. And also, I think the biggest compliment that I have received is thank you for being a voice for us, because I really acknowledge that a lot of women, especially women who work for large corporations or any sort of place where you feel like if I use my voice, I could be fired. And that's probably every single person listening to this podcast episode. And you have a lot to say and a lot to share on the subject. And you also have a lot of feelings and emotions around, and fear, rightfully so, about the most recent election. And I want to acknowledge that and also continue to be your voice and give platform and share. And, one of the other things that has been really great is that in private, a lot of women have gone on to share with me about their feelings, about their fears, and also, like, quite frankly, terrible things that have happened to them just in a few, like this short week since the election, and, remarks that have been made to their children at school, just all kinds of things that are starting to happen that we're already seeing kind of come through in terms of bad behavior. So I appreciate that I can be that sounding board and that, even if they're just sharing it with me, that's a great opportunity to get it out and to actually say it. And then also, though, I think what is really important as a reminder, and I was just sharing this with a client today, is that if you're experiencing the inability to have a voice, to be able to share, about your concerns, your feelings, so is everybody else. And so I had one woman who was frustrated because a lot of people are just like, we'll be okay. It's sort of like this general vibe that people don't really want to talk about it. Well, yeah, people don't want to talk about it. Politics is, in one sense, forbidden at work for a reason. We shouldn't have politics at work, but yet there are so many people who are suffering. And so what I offered as advice to her is like, I don't know if it sounds cliche or not, but 15-minute ally meetings are a perfect opportunity to connect with other leaders at your organization on real issues. So if you have an opportunity to just connect with a leader and just say, hey, how are you doing? that is an amazing opportunity for them to open up to you personally and actually share with you how they feel, like how they're doing. And people are more likely to do that private one-on-one than they are in like a group setting. So if you're at a conference or a networking event, like you don't want to talk about politics publicly, but the power of having a one-to-one conversation, don't dismiss that. And especially if that conversation seems to be productive and instituting change and feeling empowered, then go do it. Have one-on-one conversations. Be that sounding board for other people at your organization or externally. It will make a huge, huge difference in both in how you feel, how you see your ability to institute change one-to-one, but also in their ability to see you and to build trust and to connect with you on this deeper level. So that's my offering to you is if you're feeling like you have something to say or you just want to hear what other people have to say, don't shy away from having those 15-minute ally meetings and using this as an opportunity just to genuinely connect, not to make assumptions, not to judge them, but to genuinely see how other folks are doing. Go out, do that. Let me know how it goes, and I'll record another podcast episode. For today's episode, though, I'm making this episode for all of you who are listening who ever wondered at any point in your career whether or not you wanted to be an executive leader or not. So I get I get told this sentence a lot. I don't know if I want to be an executive. And I'm like, good. You don't have to know if you want to be an executive leader. This is not a requirement in life. This is not a requirement to work with me. This isn't a requirement in order to have various degrees of success throughout your entire career. There are women in the executive suite who never knew if they wanted to be an executive or not. I interview women on this podcast who say to me that, I didn't seek out becoming an executive. This wasn't part of my dream job when I was born. Like, yeah, of course. That is incredibly common that we don't know whether or not we want to be an executive. And of course, there are lots of reasons why we don't know. But one of the big reasons is because we don't see a lot of incredible leaders that we want to be like. Again, I pull all of these episodes from my actual client conversations. And I was talking to another woman last week, and we were talking about how she doesn't have any role models. Like now she is literally reporting to the CEO and is all the way at the top. And she's like, I don't know how to be a compassionate leader because I don't see a lot of female leaders that aren't like not compassionate, right? They don't show that level of compassion. Instead, they zip it up and they respond accordingly more in a more masculine way. And she doesn't feel like that's the type of leadership she wants to exhibit. And so essentially, I have to coach her to be the change, to be that role model for other people. And then, of course, give her examples of how that does exist in leadership, but also as a reminder that we are building something new. And so if you don't know whether or not you want to be an executive or not, it's because you don't know or see yourself in that role. Like you don't have the role models of people who are like you doing that work. Like it's very, very common. It makes a lot of sense. And so, of course, you're not sure whether or not you want to be an executive. Now, let me get to the real point of this podcast episode, which is that it doesn't matter. I don't care personally if you want to be an executive or not. It doesn't matter if you want to be an executive or not. Even if, like, I have women that their 3X vision is to start their own company. Like, their 3X vision is to have a sustainable job. Like, so I want to be able to spend more time with my family. I want to have financial abundance and freedom. I don't want to be traveling all the time. And I want to have influence. Like, that is a very solid 3X vision. And it may or may not look like being an executive leader. Like, that's fine. But the problem comes in is because so many women that I meet don't think that's fine. So here's what I mean by that. They think that indecision, right, not knowing if they want to be an executive leader or not, is keeping them from having success in their current role or at their current organization. So then, therefore, what they do is they don't take action. So if this is you, I'm just going to talk to you, okay? So let's say you come to me and you're like, Stacy, I really want to work with you, but I don't know if I want to be an executive leader or not. So I'm just going to hold off on working for you. So just say, hypothetically, and maybe you've thought this, like, I love Stacy's podcast. I love the work that she's doing, but I don't know if I want to be an executive or not. So I'm going to hold off on working with her until I know if I want to be an executive or not. I'm starting to laugh because that is a terrible way to make decisions, right? And what I mean by that is like, I totally understand why the confusion lies and like why that might be a concern. Like, I work with Stacy when I want to be an executive, when I have that level of certainty. But the reason that I laugh is because that doesn't matter to the coaching. It doesn't matter to what I'm teaching you. You can show up with executive level qualities. The combining, like, the thing that every single one of my clients, and if you're listening, like, ask yourself, do I want my work to matter? Do I want to have influence at my organization? Do I want to be able to bring my whole self to the conversation, to feel like I'm not always walking on eggshells, that I have to contort myself into somebody else in order to be successful? Do you want those things? That is the only difference between like the people who work with me, my clients, my podcast listeners, and the rest of the world. Now, you might be someone asking yourself, well, who doesn't want influence? Who doesn't want their work to matter? Who doesn't want to be not walking on eggshells all the time? And I'm going to tell you right now, 80% of the world. 80% of the world. Why? Because change is hard. Because I would rather live in my level of discomfort than change. I don't want to go for, quote unquote, the executive suite. God knows that's not the answer. It's just a marker. It's just something that I put out there and say, hey, let's just see what happens to you, what changes when you start to see yourself as an executive, when you start to be able to put yourself out there in a bigger, bolder way. That's it. You don't have to know that you want to be an executive leader. You just have to know that you want to make an impact. You just have to know that you want your work to matter. You just have to know that you don't want to be walking on eggshells all the time and you want to bring your whole self to work. Hey, welcome to the 20%. Other people don't care about this stuff. I mean, if you ask them, do you want more money? Do you want more influence? Do you want, like, whatever, higher title? Yeah, I would love that, but I just can't right now. Like, okay, fine. That's fine. I am not judging them. You are part of the select few. So if you're somebody who has asked herself, I don't know if I want to be an executive leader, but you're still listening to my podcast, chances are you probably do. You probably, like, we can just guess, maybe you do. Now I'm going to tell you how we move forward and how you take action anyway. Okay. So let's say that you are listening to this podcast and you are in that sort of indecision phase. You're not sure if you want to be an executive leader or not. And so then therefore, you're not making choices accordingly. So you don't know if you want to be an executive leader. So you're staying in indecision, which means that you're also not scheduling 15-minute ally meetings. You're not hiring me as your coach. You're listening to the podcast, but then you're like, yeah, that would be nice, but you're like, I kind of get what you're saying, but what you're essentially not doing when you're sitting in indecision is you're not taking action. You're just thinking, when I figure it out, I will start to make some decisions and take action. No. The difference between successful leaders and you, if that's you, and maybe you're somewhere in the middle, is that they take action anyway. So let's say you're sitting in indecision and you're not really sure what you want, so then therefore you do nothing. Or you say, you know what, I'm willing to entertain the possibility that I could be an executive someday, like under my own terms, as long as I have an actual impact, as long as I'm not walking on eggshells and having to contort myself all the time, as long as I actually have a voice at the table, I am willing to entertain that I could possibly become an executive someday. Then you take action. You start scheduling 15-minute ally meetings. Maybe you apply for a role that's 1 or 2 levels above your current title. Maybe you raise your hand when an opportunity becomes available. Maybe you actually hear yourself say out loud that you want to be your boss's successor someday. So imagine that. Like, let's just look at that idea of saying, I want to be your successor someday. I bet you there is somebody listening to this podcast that has been opened up to the opportunity of becoming their boss's successor, and they don't take it because they're not sure if they want to be an executive someday. And so, therefore, you sit in indecision. But I say take action, raise your hand anyway, say yes, because then what's going to happen is your boss is either going to tell you, like, no, I already have a successor. Well, that would be good information to know. So you're not slaving away at your current job thinking that something might happen in the future. Or they start to groom you to be their successor. Hey, guess what? They may stay at that organization for another 10 years. You don't actually become their successor. It doesn't matter because the steps that you took, the decisions that you make, the actions that you take along the way make you a more influential leader. So even if you go to another organization, even if you decide to start your own company someday, even if you decide to be an executive director at a nonprofit and completely pivot your expertise in your entire career, it doesn't matter. The point is that you take action before you're ready. And here's where it gets really fun. You take action, and what does that action give you? A decision. So you're listening to this podcast, you might be thinking, I have to make a decision first. So I go straight from indecision to decision. No, that's not how it works. This is actually, and maybe it has worked for you, you think about it a lot, but then imagine, so you go from indecision to decision, then you take action. You know what you come up with? A different decision, because it's the action that creates the decision. Sometimes the decisions get made for us. Like we speak up, we say, I want to be your successor. And they're like, I don't really care. You're not going to be my successor. And then you're like, oh, well, now I have a different decision to make. Do I stay here or do I leave? So it created a decision, though. It created an answer for you. So when you find yourself in indecision, the only thing you have to do is take action. That's it. You just take action. You will find out very quickly your next decision. You know how I was talking about the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people? It is a series of decisions. When you look at the executive suite, you can't be in analysis paralysis. You can't be thinking, oh, I wonder if I could do this. Oh, maybe I need to make a decision first. Oh, maybe I have to outsource all of my thoughts and like ask 20 different people before making a decision. No, the people who are the most successful are the ones who make quick decisions, strategic decisions based on the knowledge that they have in front of them. They take action to create those decisions. They put a plan in place before they are ready. So if you've been listening to this podcast and you would think, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to become an executive or not, I don't care. I know I've said that a few times, but I really want you to take this home. Stop asking yourself the question, do I want to become an executive or not? And start asking yourself, what actions can I take to find out? I guarantee you, once you start taking those actions, you're going to have your answer in a micro way. You're not going to have the holistic, I want to become an executive and that's all I care about. But you're going to have that answer which says, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can make that decision after that. And I can make that decision after that. And then I can make that decision after that. Now you're making forward progress. Now you are moving towards that greater goal of having your work matter, of making a difference at your organization, of not walking on eggshells and having to contort yourself all the time. You are taking the actions needed to get yourself to that next level of leadership. So I want to hear from you. What actions are you taking? What steps are you taking to figure out this decision to be able to move from that inaction, indecisive place back into action so that you can start making forward progress in your career right now? It is completely available to you. And I am so excited to see what is on the other side. All right. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions, and decided where you fall in each category, and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be, or how far away you might be, and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve, and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time, so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today.